Hey guys, Rick Taylor here with KS USA. Today we're going to talk about how to service your Rage IS dropper suspension post. Okay, so some of the basic tools that we're going to need to service KS dropper we'll go over here. If there are additional or specific or specialty tools for your particular model that we're going to go over, we'll discuss those in further detail a little bit later on in the video. So you want to start with a good quality biodegradable degreaser. We tend to like the simple green cleaners here. You can dilute them down to whatever ratio you want. They wash away easily, and they're not caustic or damaging. So a good degreaser. For lubrication, we recommend either the KS Post Paste, or if you don't have that available, the Slick Oleum is basically the same formula. It's designed specifically for suspension use, more specifically air oil systems, so it's a really good lubrication to use. We don't recommend using automotive grease because they tend to be a higher viscosity and can cause poor performance of your dropper if you use those. A pair of soft jaws so that you can hold the seat post. The one that we have here happens to have a round clamp hole in it, but if you can't find one of these in your local market, you can also do a V-block, which a lot of times you can get those from Amazon or from a local hardware store, a machine shop supply. Those kind of places have them. And essentially you just need something that you're going to be able to clamp and hold the tube. If you don't have access to that, don't panic. You can also use the bicycle frame to hold the post in place while we unthread the collar. We'll go over that in a little more detail later. Utility knife, we generally will use this just to help us remove the guide bushings. So these are handy to have. If you don't have one, you can do it by using your fingernail, but I'd recommend if you can find a utility knife, definitely grab that. A set of Allen wrenches. So you're going to need from a 6 down to a 1.5 millimeter set. So they can either be a T-handle like this, or you can have one of the little pocket folding ones work great too. But just make sure they're good quality so you don't end up rounding or stripping out any of the bolts. Last would be a strap wrench. And the strap wrench is basically to remove the collar. You'll need these on nearly all models of KS dropper, with the exception of the A12 Integra and the Rage I. So those two will use a little different system that we'll talk about later. But the strap wrench you can get from most hardware stores, and they're generally used for fitting pipes that you don't want to do damage to. So if they're a chrome finish or something, these allow you to grab and turn pipe without damaging the surface. So local hardware stores, and again, this is called a strap wrench. And then we definitely like to use a microfiber towel for cleaning and the internal parts and everything. These work really well with the degreaser. They tend to take all of the debris off of your post. So you can get these through most hardware stores, or if you have a Costco in your area, they do their Kirkland brand of towels that work really well. So we're going to service our Rage IS today. And first thing we'll talk about is actually a couple of the tools that we didn't mention earlier in the video. One of those is a pair of snap ring pliers. This next item you'd have to get from your local bike shop, and that would be the tool here from KS that actually captures your lower bushings and your band bushing to make it easier to reassemble. And we'll show you how that works later. You can get these through your local bike shop. We also have an alternative to this tool that you can make at home. It's a little more complicated to use, but it's something that you can do. And then the bushing press. And so bushing press, again, is something that you would get from your local bike shop, but we can also show you how to kind of do a DIY version of this that you can get the post apart to service it. If you're going to do this frequently, it's definitely worth the investment to get the shop tools to do this job and make it easier. So let's go ahead and jump right into the servicing. The first thing that we're going to do here so that these don't keep falling and rattling is we're going to take the upper clamp assembly apart. So your saddle clamp, the bolts, we'll just set these all aside. Now, you may be tempted to let the air pressure out. Don't do that. Go ahead and just leave it set where you have it. We're not going to be doing anything to the air system inside. We're going to service the bushings, so we don't need to change or do anything to the air. So just go ahead and leave that sealed up and where it's at. Okay. Next step is to take our snap ring pliers, and we're going to get in here and we're going to pop this snap ring. And then you give it a little tap, and that'll pop that out. Now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to take the actuator off of the compression rod. The easiest way I find to do that is just take your snap ring pliers. There's a hole in the top of these clips, and you just grab it basically like a pair of pliers. And I kind of put it into the top, and then you just sort of rotate it down. And those are going to pop right out. This is your actuator assembly. It slides right off after you take out the retainer clips, and then take your push rod out and set it aside. Okay, so now let's talk about how to disassemble the rest of the post here. If you have this tool, the next step would be to compress this, and I'll show you that in a moment. If you're using our kind of generic or DIY tool, leave this extended. Okay, so with the compression rod out, leave this extended. And what you're going to want to do is find a washer. You probably want to take this to a hardware store with you. Find 1 or 2 washers that fit just the inside diameter and slide in there. You want to get a bolt that's about 75 to 100 millimeter long, and you want to find a nut to fit that bolt. What you'll do is you'll put the bolt through the washers. You'll thread the nut on so it just sticks out, and you're going to go ahead and put the washers in. You put your snap ring in again with the sharp edge out, snap in. That will keep the washers from coming out, and you're going to tighten that bolt. And as the bolt tightens, it's going to thread past the nut and go inside, and that's going to work as a press to press those out. Now I'm going to show you how to use the tool. So we're going to compress the cartridge down, and then I'm going to let it rock to the side. What I did there is I compressed the push rod because this is a blind hole in this tool. And if we didn't do that, this would just end up bottoming out and we wouldn't be able to get the tool in far enough to use it. So what I did is I put the push rod in, I pushed it down, and then I kept the pressure on the compression rod here, but I rotated it to the side. And that let this come out and lock it in position. Okay, so we're going to do that. Go ahead and slide this all the way out. We're going to put the tool in. Okay, now we're going to take our snap ring again with the sharp side out. Put it in place. Okay, and then use your tool to kind of push that down. You kind of heard it click there. And give it a little tap and make sure it's properly seated. And with pressure pushing down on it so that it keeps this from spinning inside, we're going to go ahead and turn it. You should be able to just hold the head with one hand and turn the tool with the other. And you'll see that that's pushing that whole assembly out. Now we're going to pull this out carefully. Okay. Now you're going to have alternating bushings here, and we'll show you in just a second how those come apart. But let's take our attention over to the mass tube. We're going to go ahead and take this tool out of here. So we're going to take snap ring out, pull the tool out, and just so we don't have to go back and forth too many times, let's go ahead and clean this tube first. So a little bit of our degreaser, which we're using Simple Green in this case. Let's go ahead and use just the handle of one of our tools to push this down in. Going to give that a good cleaning. If you hold that up to the light, you can look down inside and see if there's any debris in there. So make sure you clean it until there's no more debris and it's really clean. And then we're going to go ahead and lube this now so that we can just not go back and forth and make this a little more clear for you. Inside the tube here, there's two steps. There's an outer step, an inner step, and then where the races are inside. Take your degreaser and wipe those two outside steps very clean. You don't want any grease or lube on those, okay? And we're gonna take a little bit of lube here. We're gonna put that in, and we're gonna go about to our knuckle, and that'll get you down past those two steps. And go ahead and run the grease on the inside diameter of the tube, okay? You wanna, again, be careful not to put grease here. If you do, and you press the seal back in later, the seal can wanna pop out because it doesn't have enough grip, because the grease will lubricate it, okay? So set that aside. Next step we're gonna do is pull off the band bushing. Set that aside. You can use your finger and thumb to pull the wiper seal back and to pull the bushing back. Okay, now if you look at these, they've alternated, and so the front, which lines up with the point of the head, and the back, which lines up with the back of the head, the metal bushing is down. The reason for that is that helps take the fore and aft load, okay? And then the bushings are the opposite way on the other four positions. So we'll take our utility knife and we'll pop all of these out. Now, the reason for the two different bushings is the POM is preloaded. So when we put that in, it creates a little tension, and that keeps the rotation from making rattling noises or looseness in the system. The metallic bushings take the load better, and so they're designed for that purpose. Okay, so we'll set all those aside. We're gonna pull the lower bearing off, and it's gonna be a little challenging to get it past this bottom part, and all I can tell you is if you can push it evenly to remove, so just, you see there, and just pops off. Now, pay attention when you take this apart. There is a end with kind of a stop or metallic or aluminum end there, and then if you look at the other side, that's where the DU bushing is, just pushes in flush. So you wanna make sure that that end comes out to the end of the cartridge when you put it back together. So I'm gonna just set it down, face down, so we remember which way that goes. Okay, and then we're gonna take off the wiper seal. Okay, set it aside. Now, if you had any issue with your cartridge and you're servicing this because you're replacing the cartridge, you'd go ahead and put that cartridge in now. If you're just doing a normal lube and clean for your post, and you will clean this up and reuse the same part. So whichever case you've got, we're gonna clean this one because we're reusing it. Okay, now we're gonna take the wiper seal first. We're gonna clean that really well. Also clean the outside of it, because as we talked about, this is gonna press back into here. We want this surface and this surface to be dry and clean when they go together. Okay, then we're gonna take some grease and we're gonna put it inside the cavity here. And by filling that cavity with grease, it's gonna create a moisture barrier that keeps water and debris out much better, but it also pre-lubes the system going in. Now this part is a little challenging, so you're gonna put it in, and I tend to try to get one edge on, you can see on kind of an angle, and then I rotate it around. The reason that I do that is that this has kind of a sharp edge where that bushing sits in, and if you just try to jam it straight down on there, you can damage the wiper. So putting it on a little bit of an angle and getting a running start on it helps a bit. Okay, now we're gonna take that bushing, we're gonna wipe it clean. I'm gonna put a little bit of lube on that as well. Okay, and again, this one we just wanna make sure we push it on as straight as possible. Sometimes it's helpful if you've got your vise to just catch the edge and give it a tap. You can see there it helped guide it on. Okay, and then we're gonna push it past that second spot. Now, if you're having trouble again, what you can do is you can open your vise so that it just allows us to sit and give it a tap. Okay, and that allows it to slide in nice. Okay, just be careful when you're sliding it into the vise that you don't dig into your stanchion when you're doing it. You know, you just kind of use common sense and a little bit of care while you're doing that, and you'll be okay. Okay, so we'll wipe that down again. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and put our bushings in. And again, as we talked about, we're going to stagger those. So the easiest thing I think to do is let's put a little bit of grease in the front and the back slots. And you see that's the back of the post, that's the front of the post. And like we talked about before, well, let's wipe these down first because that's important. Get these clean. Let's talk about inspecting them too. You want to make sure these are cylindrical and that they don't have any wear on them. There shouldn't be flat spots. And as long as they're in good shape and they look good, you can go ahead and reuse them. If you need to replace them, your local bike shop can get these for you, no problem. Okay, so again, the metal one goes to the bottom. The little trick that I'm doing here is I filled that groove with grease. That way these things don't pop back out on you while you're trying to work with them. Okay, then we're putting the POM one on the top. And then let's flip it 180 and we're going to do the same thing here. So metal on the bottom, plastic on the top. Now everything else we fill in is the opposite. So we're going to do a little grease in the grooves. We're going to do plastic on the bottom, metal on the top. Plastic on the bottom, again, metal on the top. And I'm just putting a little bit of extra grease in here to hold these in because I really don't want them falling out and have to chase them. So. Trying to get fancy and do both at the same time. Should just take it easy and do one at a time. Here we go. Okay, so that's it for those. Now, you can get this tool from your local bike shop, and this is specifically for doing this job. If your local bike shop doesn't have this, or you don't have a bike shop in the near proximity, you can take an aluminum can and cut a strip that's the width here, and what you'll do is roll it up. So you want it, you know, the piece kind of, well, here's a good illustration. If this was a piece of your aluminum can, you want this width to be the width here, and you want the diameter where it wraps around and touches to be the same as this. Okay, so that essentially just needs to wrap around these and hold them in. But what the tool is going to do for you is the tool is going to come down over those bushings. There's 3 grooves there. There's the 3 bushings there. It captures. We're going to do the same thing over here on this side, capture them. And then we'll take that band bushing and it drops in place. And then we're going to slide this up just slightly. And you want to make sure that the edge of the band bushing tucks down in flush where that groove was that we talked about earlier. Okay, and we'll slide both these up. And we're going to put inward pressure on it. Now, if you're using the aluminum can, it's a little more challenging and you'll have to kind of draw them together and then hold them with your finger. Again, if you can get this tool, I'd recommend doing it. But you know, we want to give you an alternative to that in case you can't. Take your mask that we've already put lube on, and we're going to go ahead and drop that down. Gently push down. You're going to feel it stop. We're going to rotate till we feel it drop in there. And go ahead and push it down about halfway up the stanchion. And then you're going to be able to back these 2 tools out. If you have your can, you can do the same thing. Okay? And so then the next thing you can do, there is a tool to seat the wiper, but if you like, you can just take and fold up your towel. Give yourself some cushion so you don't damage the head here, okay? And that's going to seat it for you, okay? So now we'll take our push rod. Just make sure that's clean. We'll put a little lube on it. Put that inside. Now I also like to put just a little bit of lube on top, on the end of the push rod, and that's where this actuator is going to ride. Go ahead and slide that down. Okay, you'll see that there's kind of a half moon shape here cut out. That goes in this slot here. Okay, and kind of rock it and you'll feel it want to drop in. Do that to the other side. I'm pushing down and rocking at the same time to make sure that they go into the slot that's on the end here. If you miss the slot, the end's just going to pop back out. Then what I like to do is take the vise and very gently just squeeze it to make sure that they're all the way in. And then if you look, the end here has this flat. So if you put that in, don't over tighten this because you can damage it. It's nylon. But if you do that and then you take this and kind of turn it, you'll see that that allows it to drop in. If you don't get those things all the way in, it's not going to go. Now you can give it a tap to make sure you drive it home. Be careful, like I said, this is nylon, and if you go hitting on it too hard, you could possibly damage it. So, but that drove it all the way in. Then our next step is going to be to install our snap ring. Now again, to remind you, the snap ring has a sharp edge and a rounded edge. The sharp edge should face outward to take the load, and you want to put that on. Now, let's talk about installing the snap ring around this actuator. You can take the snap ring out of the way for a minute. You can put the tool through this actuator here. If you pull it on an angle, you're going to damage your actuator. So what you can do is wrap your fingers around and put your thumb on top. And if you pull straight up, okay, you can see I'm not putting any side load on that at all that's going to damage it. Okay. So what we're going to do is put our snap ring on, sharp side up. I like to rotate it so the opening in the snap ring is on the side here. Put your tool in there and pull up and let the snap ring drop down, and then let the actuator just pop over the top of it. Now you're not, when you're doing the snap ring, you're not fighting to get the snap ring around the actuator. Now we're going to squeeze it in, and then I like to push it. If you heard that, it snapped in place. You heard a good lock. Now, before you think about putting this back in the bike, give it a couple good wraps on the bench and make sure that that's seated and it doesn't pop past. As long as that holds position, you're in good shape. If you want to, you can cycle it through a few times. Listen for a good top out. And if all that is good, your next step will be to put your clamps back on. It's a good time to clean and lubricate these with some good quality waterproof grease or some anti-seize compound. And then make sure you torque your bolts to spec. Both of them need to be torqued evenly, and the specs are listed on the head of your post. And you're ready to go ahead and put that back on your bike.